Chapter 12. Steele tapped his finger on the bench top impatiently as he gazed out the window of the high building. The views were looking towards the north and to Mount Regan, as the last rays of the setting sun reached from the distant horizon. The light cast the green of the mountains in a golden hue, shimmering off the rooftops and windows of the palatial mansions that were built in the folds of the mountain. Although it was called a mountain, Mount Regan was better described as a large hill, its summit thin and rocky, with a tall radio tower at the top. It's rather odd, though, to Steele's mind, to see the hillsides of the mountain covered in such foliage at the centre of a concrete metropolis. No doubt that if Mount Regan had not been designated as a place of extraordinary natural beauty and wildlife preservation, it would have been covered in grey buildings and estates. In fact, at the foothills of the mountain, there was a zoo where people could come and see all the animals that had once lived across all of Eden, but had since been regulated to a small portion. Over in the Golden Hills and parts of Vale, there was also forestry and some wildlife. Most of the animals had been driven away or killed by the build-up of development. Some of the species had been killed to the point of near extinction, and the only place to see them now was in captivity of the Mount Regan Zoo. Taking a deep breath, he stopped tapping and rubbed his tired brow. For hours now, he had been sitting in this meeting room of the East Point police station, and after writing out his official statement about what happened to Knox, he had been left alone. The room was different to the interrogation rooms Reeves had sat him in previously at the Central Police Headquarters, but in many ways it was still the same. All police stations had the same feel to them, even the same smell, and it was one that filled him with memories of visiting his father at his work many years ago. He'd only gone with his father to the police station once when he was younger, but he still remembered it clearly. A flicker of pain came to Steele's face as he realised that he could remember the police station vividly, but in his memories his father's face was a shadow. It was not only his father's face either, Steele realised, and both the features of his mother and sister also clouded in his mind. With a heavy sigh, he ran his hand down his face and then through his black hair, turned his attention back out the window as he tried to dismiss the troubling realisation. There were more pressing issues as well. This stop at the police station had turned into a lengthy delay. Even as he looked out the window, the rays of the sun vanished and the twilight seeped into the city. Street lights and building lights started to turn on, covering the cityscape with fairy lights. Mount Regan was turning grey, its shadows broken by the fancy mansions and bright lights at the peak where the commercialised lookout for tourists had been built at the base of the radio tower. Beyond the skyline of the mountain, the horizon was dark with clouds and flickers of lightning, promising the arrival of a storm later. Hopefully he'd be done with the police and Clara by the time it struck, but with the way things had been going, it was a forlorn hope indeed. It had been early afternoon when Knox was attacked by Frankie, and Reeves had showed up rather swiftly, and now it was almost night time. Steele's mind absently replayed the confrontation with Jimmy and Frankie. He'd seen the wild look in Frankie's eyes before the man had attacked Knox, but he had done nothing to prevent it. Could he have done anything? He had not properly trained in his martial arts for some time, but the basic techniques and instincts would never diminish. Could he have intercepted Frankie's attack before he stabbed Knox? The question started to eat at him, but he stubbornly pushed it away. It was done now. There was no use wondering. He had to focus on the next phase of his plans. Both Frankie and Jimmy would realise their error in crossing him before he was finished, and Knox would recover. That was what was going to happen. Steele would make sure of it. The single door to the room opened then, and Reeves entered, carrying a paper bag, a small tray of cardboard cups, and a file under his arm. Without a word, the detective dropped the bag in front of Steele and moved to take the seat on the other side of the table. "Food?" Steele wondered as he looked at the bag. "Thought you'd be hungry," Reeves remarked gruffly, taking one of the paper cups and placing it near Steele. "Thanks," Steele replied, taking out the two cardboard containers and opening them to see what was inside. "Pork buns and stir-fry?" "You don't like pork buns?" Reeves asked curiously, looking up from the file he'd opened in front of him. "A man is not a whole man until he eats a pork bun." "I'm not complaining." Steele smiled slightly and started eating, looking curiously to Reeves' file as he did. "How's Knox?" Steele asked as he finished a mouthful.
"Stable, but still critical," replied the old man. "Once he recovers and wakes up, I'll go see him. I still need his statement to make this case watertight."
"Case?" Steele asked, a frown coming to his face.
"Exactly," said Reeves.
The detective spun the open file around and slid it towards Steele, who moved his food to the side so he could bring it closer to see. It was a file on Frankie.
"Frankie Pierce,"
Reeves said as Steele flicked through the document, noticing his own witness statement among the papers.
"He's been charged with attempted murder, grievous bodily harm, assault with a deadly weapon, unlawful possession of a deadly weapon, and possession of illegal drugs. We found a quantity of coke on him when he was arrested. You see, Steele, this is the right way to do it."
The remark brought a perplexed frown to Steele's brow, and he looked up from the file as he slid it back towards Reeves. "The right way?" he asked. "What's that supposed to mean?"
"Just what I said,"
Reeves replied, stabbing his finger down on the open file.
"If you want to take down a criminal, you need to put together a strong case. Any judge would convict on this evidence, regardless of whether they're as corrupt as you claim."
"It would be foolish not to convict," Steele agreed. "You've got surveillance footage, and the knife Frankie used. Without those two things, though, it would have not been so strong. And most cases are not as clear-cut as this one."
"Exactly,"
Reeves nodded.
"Every case needs to be as strong as you can make it. That's all you can do. Instead of going off on your own and turning into a vigilante."
"What are you saying?" Steele asked, generally confused. "I'm not a vigilante. I'm not trying to take out the company. Why would I?"
"The man who killed your father had ties to the company. You know that,"
Reeves said, seeming perplexed as well.
"The one who drugged and raped your sister was also working for the company."
"He's dead," Steele said flatly. "And the man who killed my father is in prison until he dies, thanks to you. So what do I have against the company now?"
"Then what are you playing at with Jimmy and Clara?"
Reeves demanded, his voice growing lower as he leaned over the table. "The company is a tool, Reeves," Steele sighed. "I have no intention of joining them. I'm using them."
"Then you're an idiot,"
the old detective said, shaking his head and leaning back in his chair.
"Doing that will get you killed. You can bet on that. Look what it's already done to Knox. Before you came back, Knox kept away from the company as much as possible. He's a smart one, clearly. You continue on."
"Come on, Reeves, enough of this," Steele interrupted. "You've been kind enough to look after me and my family since Father died. But you don't need to anymore. I can make my own decisions, and I am well aware of the risks. So is Knox. So don't try and use him against me. We done here? Can I go?" As he spoke, Steele stood up from the table, leaving the food and drink that had been brought for him, and stepped towards the door. Reeves did not reply straight away, and took a deep breath as he studied Steele closely before he nodded slightly.
"You can go," said the detective, "but we're not done. I promised your father I'd look out for you as best I could. I wasn't able to help your sister, but I'll be damned if I let you destroy yourself on this path."
"That's not your decision to make," Steele replied seriously before he departed out the door. From the office spaces, he swiftly walked through the precinct to the elevators and took him to the ground floor. The layout was virtually the same as the central police headquarters, except on a smaller scale. Knox, of course, was not waiting for him when he left the building. The night was coming on slowly outside, with twilight lingering at this time of year. In the dusk, it was a captivating mixture of city lights and deep blue heavens above that still held enough light to see easily enough. The shadows were dark, though, and the cars were starting to turn on their headlights. There was a taxi rank not far from the police station, and Steele slipped into the back seat of the first car in line. "Evening, sir," the overweight and balding driver said, trying to sound cheerful. "Where to?" "Tradeco building," Steele said as he closed the door and pulled on his seatbelt. "Too easy," the driver replied, turning on the taxi meter and starting the engine before pulling into the heavy traffic. It was virtually the middle of peak hour traffic, when all the office workers were returning home after their long day. So, despite the fact that Steele's taxi was stationary for most of the journey, the taxi charge meter kept counting up. The cost of the journey quickly increased to an amount that could reasonably be described as legal theft. Due to the length of time travelling between the police station and the Tradeco building, which was not as far as to warrant the time it took. It was night by the time the taxi pulled into the stopping bay. Steele paid the driver without any words, and left without thanking the man, eager to deal with Clara before any more time was wasted. In through the entrance of the building, he filtered through the workers leaving for the night and caught the elevator just before the doors closed. He remembered the floor number Farron had taken them to last time he was here and pressed the button for the top floor. No one else got aboard the elevator as it went to the top of the building, and it arrived swiftly. But as Steele left the lift, he was forced to stop as a tall and muscled man and a short, thin woman wearing suits blocked his path immediately. "Who the hell are you?" the first guard demanded in surprise, his hand slipping inside his jacket to draw out a pistol. "You must be stupid wandering here, mate," the second guard said, also drawing her gun. "My name is Reinhardt Steele," he said to the uneasy guards, holding his hands out before him in a gesture of affability. "I need to speak with Clara." "Do you now?" the first guard scoffed. "Do you think anyone off the street can just walk in and speak to Clara?" "Let him through, guys," a call from Farron, as she came through the door at the end of the hall, drew the attention of the two guards. "What?" the first guard demanded, though his posture relaxed. "Clara wants to talk with him," Farron said seriously, causing the two guards to frown at Steele as he casually walked between them. "Evening," Steele greeted Farron, his tone low and a slight smile on his face. "We heard about Knox. Is he all right?" Farron asked without returning the greeting. "He will be," Steele nodded, and Farron looked relieved before she showed him through the door into Clara's office. It looked almost exactly the same as last time Steele was there. A few more of Clara's lackeys about the place, but the woman herself was standing at the front of her desk in the exact same way he'd left her previously. In fact, she seemed to be wearing the same outfit as well. Perhaps a different shirt, though. "Reinhardt Steele," Clara greeted him, her expression showing no delight at all. "You've got some nerve wandering in here without an invitation. What do you want?" "You heard about Knox?" Steele asked, not willing to waste any time with pleasantries and wanting to get straight to the point. "Yes," Clara nodded, a flicker of genuine concern coming to her face. "Is he all right?" "He is," Steele nodded. "He will recover, and Jimmy will pay for this." "I heard it was Frankie," Clara said, her hard expression returning. "I also heard the cops have already arrested and charged him. It looks like he'll be spending a good deal of his life behind bars now." "Frankie's a moron," Steele stated, but he would never have attacked Knox unless Jimmy had said it was all right. He might dislike Frankie, but Jimmy is in control of him. "I get it," Clara said, her eyes narrowing. "You want revenge, and you think I will help you get it. Is that right?" "No," Steele replied evenly. "I'm here because Jimmy wants me to be his mole in your organization. He's threatened to kill both me and Knox if I don't do this. So here I am." Clara scoffed in disbelief, her scarred cheek twitching slightly. The other gang members in the room started to mutter between each other, shooting dangerous looks in Steele's direction. "You and Jimmy don't like each other," Steele continued, undaunted by the look in Clara's eyes. "So I want to help you get rid of him." "You say all this and expect me to believe you?" Clara almost laughed. "How can I know you aren't really working for Jimmy and are simply saying all this to gain my trust?" "Do I have a reason to lie?" Steele asked in reply. "Do you think I somehow conspired with Jimmy to have Frankie stab Knox so I could gain your trust? Why would I need to go to those lengths when you already partially trusted me because you already trusted Knox?" Clara was silent, her eyes narrowing as her scarred cheek twitched again. "Maybe you're right, though," Steele continued. "Perhaps I do have some desire for revenge now, but that's not my main motive." "So what is?" Clara asked, her voice controlled. "I want Jimmy's position as associate," Steele said simply, watching Clara's eyes go wide in surprise before she quickly composed herself and forced a laugh. The others in the room continued to mumble between themselves, and Steele noticed a suspicious look on Farron's face. "You and Jimmy have been fighting over property for some years," Steele said. "He's been a thorn in your side, always instigating the conflicts, as he greedily tries to take full control of East Point under Benedict. Don't you think things will be better off without him?" Silence fell over the room as Steele finished, and everyone seemed to look to Clara. The woman held her composure well, though, and a smile came to her face as she laughed again, You're a funny man, Steele, Clara said surprisingly. And clever, I'll give you that. But you won't be able to coerce me into an open war with Jimmy. I wasn't trying, Steele said simply. I'm suggesting I be your double agent. Jimmy thinks he has me under control with the threat of killing Knox, and that he will know if I betray him. You are betraying him, Clara stated flatly. How can I expect you to do no less to me? You don't need to trust me, Clara, Steele said as if it was obvious. Just work with me. I'll feed both you and Jimmy information on the other. So with that knowledge, you can decide what you will allow me to divulge to Jimmy. There's no negative for you here, no risk of danger. Accepting me into your organization allows me and Knox to stay breathing, and might provide you with some interesting information on Jimmy's operations. Clara's scarred cheek twitched again as she pondered his argument. From her silence alone, Steele could tell he was convincing her. So when she nodded her head, he was not surprised. All right, Steele, Clara decided. I suppose I don't need to mention that if you try and screw me, I'll carve your face off with a dull knife and drown you in the bay. Naturally, Steele smiled, subtly releasing a sigh of relief. And already I have something that might interest you. Not about Jimmy, though. What's that? Clara narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Well, before Knox was sent to hospital, he and I were arranging for a shipment of guns from the mainland through Deke Reuben, Steele explained. The deal is still happening, but I won't be able to handle it now that I'm alone. Guns? Clara raised a curious eyebrow. Knox's idea, Steele said casually. He thought that we could then sell them on for a profit through his black market contacts. Are you interested in taking the deal? For a sum, of course. A sum? Clara scoffed. You're part of my group now, so your deals are my deals. You want Jimmy to think you fooled me, don't you? Steele clenched his jaw and frowned unhappily as he folded his arms. I guess so, Steele said, releasing a deep breath. I expect a decent cut, though. We'll see, Clara smirked confidently. What are the details? Monday night, at 11, Dock 77 in Reuben's warehouses. Steele answered, his annoyance obvious. It's only a small shipment, of course, 500,000. It's already paid for. We just need to confirm the goods and move them to a secure place. 500? Clara raised an eyebrow. Not large, but where did Knox find that kind of money? You'll have to ask him, Steele shrugged. He's going to be disappointed when he learns how this deal ended up, though. I guess it's just his bad luck, Clara said coldly. I expect you to be there Monday night, of course. Steele? Of course, Steele replied as if it was obvious. This is my deal as well, don't forget that. Not on your life, Clara said darkly, implying a double meaning to her words that Steele did not miss. I'll be keeping an eye on you until then, and if you slip word of this to Jimmy and he interrupts, you'll die painfully, Steele. What makes you think I want Jimmy to get his hands on some guns? Steele asked in reply, his confusion obvious. I think it's clear I have no intention of being his mole. We'll see, won't we? Clara replied evenly. Steele frowned heavily and sighed. Farron, get him one of our encrypted mobiles, Clara said seriously, not taking her eyes from Steele. I'll be in touch, Reinhardt. Call me Steele, he said, his eyes hard as he turned away and accompanied Farron from the office into the hall where there was a small reception desk. Without saying anything, Farron opened the top drawer and took out a mobile, which he handed to Steele. I'll take you down, Farron said, her voice rather terse as she led the way to the elevator. A flicker of confusion came to Steele's mind as he followed, past the guards into the door of the lift. The elevator took a long time to come, and the time seemed to pass slowly as he glanced awkwardly to Farron beside him, trying to work out why she was clearly annoyed with him. The doors chimed open soon enough, and together they stepped inside. No one else was in the compartment. The doors closed, and as the lift descended, he turned his full attention to Farron. What is it? He asked curiously, a little hesitantly. Is this your idea of letting me know your plans? Farron asked, her voice hard. That's why you're annoyed? Steele remarked in surprise, almost laughed. Well? She demanded, and Steele noticed some concern in her voice as well as annoyance. No, he said firmly, this was not my idea. But after Knox was stabbed by Frankie, I had to improvise a little bit. All right, Farron said after a few moments and released a deep breath. Is this gun deal legitimate then? Are you asking for Clara? Steele wondered, drawing the woman's eyes to him. No, I'm just asking, she replied and looked away. You know Clara will kill you as quickly as Jimmy will if you betray her. I know, Steele said casually. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Farron took another deep breath and did not reply as the lift doors opened and Steele stepped down into the lobby. So, when's our next date? Steele asked, turning to Farron as they stopped in the middle of the lobby. Farron seemed a little surprised by the sudden change in topic, before she laughed and looked away. The tension that had been around her like a cloud dissipating. I don't know if there will be, she replied, a sly smile coming to her face. Maybe after this gun deal of yours is over and Knox is better. Probably a good idea, Steele agreed and turned to go. I'll call you sometime. Reinhardt, Farron called out, making him pause and turn back around. Try not to get yourself killed. Farron sounded genuine, and Steele smiled before he turned away and continued for the door, waving over his shoulder. Staying out of trouble was not something he could lightly promise, and as he walked from the building and along the sidewalk, he took out the phone Jimmy had given him. The message he sent was simple, and he struggled to keep his real feelings from out of the text. I'm in. Clara is none the wiser. He was about to add a little bit about his anger over the incident between Knox and Frankie, but gritting his teeth, he sent the message and put the phone back in his pocket. Jimmy would learn of his anger soon enough.